Coming up on this episode of Crime Family, the abduction of Elnaz Hajtamiri, a 37-year-old woman who was taken from her home and never seen again. And at the door were three men dressed in police uniforms. They said that they had a warrant out for Elnaz's arrest and that they were there to take her into custody.
It makes me think that this was very personal because they maybe knew her family. They knew she had family in that area. They knew people that knew who she was staying with, so they could have gotten contact with people like that.
Like I said, two men were captured on surveillance footage at the scene of her assault in December 2021. I want to know, how many people knew exactly where she was. I feel like they had to have known that she was there for sure.
Also, she kept the same car, so somebody obviously knew her car, so they could have followed it all the way out there.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Crime Family. I'm your co-host AJ, and I'm here with my sisters Stephanie and Katie, just like always. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing a developing case with all of you. It's a story that happened just earlier this year in Ontario, and it's still very much ongoing. And so due to this, there isn't a ton of information out there on this case, and more updates will hopefully be coming soon. And we will be sure to update you guys as these updates come in. But there isn't a ton out there already. So we're going to be talking about the abduction of Elnaz Hajtamiri, a 37-year-old woman who was taken from her home and never seen again. And so I actually became familiar with this case only a few days ago. And it was actually an Instagram account that was run by Elnaz's family and friends started following us on Instagram. And so when I saw the notification, I went into the profile and started looking at all the updates that the family was posting. And they're very active and they're posting lots of not necessarily updates, but just posting information about the case to get the word out there. So I began to actually look into this very mysterious case once I became aware of it. And so that's when I decided that we had to do an episode on it because I think it is a very important episode to do. I want to help the family bring Elnaz home because it is still unsolved. And I think, we can help in our small little way by raising awareness about the case and putting our listeners on the lookout for those responsible or just making them more aware that this is still ongoing because you never know who might know something and what tips can result of it. So this is our own little way of helping this family. Actually, and I also think that this case actually triggers the most primal of fears that people have. So just imagine getting a strange knock on the door at nighttime in a quiet rural area. And on the other side of the door, you have a group of people who then suddenly just burst in and grab you from your home, drag you out, and then you're never seen again. It's pretty much everyone's worst nightmare and kind of the thing that you see take place in horror movies. So the fact that, this is exactly what happens in this case, but the details don't stop there. There's actually a lot more to all of this than originally meets the eye. With that being said, I'm going to get right into it. And I'm assuming that you guys haven't heard of this case or anything. It's fairly new, and I wasn't aware of it before this, so...
No, I haven't heard this one at all.
Yeah, same. And me neither.
Okay. So Elnaz Hajtamiri, or sometimes her surname is referred to as just Tamiri. She was born and raised in Iran and has only been in Canada since 2018. And she actually moved here after her husband passed away in 2017 after a short battle with a terminal illness. And so Elnaz was an accomplished woman back in Iran. She actually opened up a school in her husband's name back in Iran before moving to Canada. And so upon arrival, she ended up living in Richmond Hill, Ontario, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with the area, it's just a suburb north of Toronto. It's still part of the GTA. She was living there and attempting to open up her own cake business. She was really extremely passionate about baking, and this was kind of like a long-term dream of hers. So she was in the process of getting this business up and running, and she seemed to be adjusting well to a new life in Canada, and she loved being here. So everything seemed to be going pretty great for her first little while here. So even though Elnaz lived in Richmond Hill, she was actually residing in Wasaga Beach, Ontario in January of 2022, which is when this abduction happens. And so Wasaga Beach is a small town in Ontario, just about 150 kilometers north of Toronto. So it's a very popular tourist destination in the summer, and it's home to the longest freshwater beach in the world, which I actually didn't even know until I started looking into it for this case. But the 2016 population of Wasaga Beach was just over 20,000 people. But that number easily doubles or triples in the summer months because, like I said, it's a huge, popular tourist destination. There are many people who own cottages near Wasaga Beach, and there are numerous summer residents, but there are also year-round residents. And so that would be like the 20,000 people who are there all through the year. So at 8:32 p.m. on January 12th, 2022, there was a knock on the door at the house where Elnaz was residing on Trailwood Place. That's the name of the little road, which is a quiet residential street in Wasaga Beach. And at the door were 3 men dressed in police uniforms. They said that they had a warrant out for Elnaz's arrest and that they were there to take her into custody. And the owner of the home was there at the time with Elnaz, and he actually got suspicious of these 3 men at the door, and he attempted to call 911. This is when the men eventually busted into the home and overpowered the homeowner and took Elnaz. The men carried her out. She was barefoot at the time. They took her out to their car, threw her phone and her watch into the snow. And of course, this whole time, she's screaming as they're, carrying her towards the car or dragging her. There were some reports that said that she was dragged out of the home. But at some point, the screaming did stop just before they pushed her into the vehicle. So I don't know if maybe they threatened her and told her, if she didn't stop screaming, that they would, hurt her family or something like that, or whatever they said to her. Maybe they subdued her in some other way. But there were witnesses who said that they did notice the screaming stop once they got close to the car.
Did anyone see her being dragged out of the house or getting into the car?
Well, I'll go on a little bit. There are some eyewitnesses who I guess the police did speak to. It's a little bit unclear. Like, obviously there were witnesses because some of the information that comes out that suggests that there were people who witnessed part of it, but I don't know how many or who those people were, but I'm assuming the homeowner, he was there when it happened. So I don't know what it means. Like, they say that he was overpowered when they entered the home. They overpowered him and took her. So I don't know if that means that they knocked him out or something, or maybe just overpowered means, there's 3 of them and 1 of him. So just by sheer numbers, he couldn't overtake them. But
was this person that was her landlord, or was a friend of hers that was living there?
Well, I'll get into it a little bit more. Okay. He was the owner of the house, and he did know Elnaz. He was a family member of Elnaz's, so that was their relationship. He was obviously there at the time, but like I said, I don't really know. Although maybe if they had a gun, if they were armed, they could have just pointed the gun at him and he couldn't do anything, right? So that could also mean they overpowered him that way too. So I don't know what stuff he actually saw after they took her out, or if there was another witness somewhere that saw her being carried to the car, dragged or something, but there were witnesses of some sort. But I didn't get any other reports. You'd think, although if there were other witnesses, that there would be other people calling 911, but there was no other witnesses saying that they received a bunch of 911 calls. I guess he tried to call 911 before they busted into the house, and then he obviously was the one who called 911, I'm assuming. But I'm assuming if there's other eyewitnesses, they're all going to be calling 911 too. Because
didn't she live in a populated area, where the house was?
Well, it was a residential neighborhood. It was, yeah, there was lots of other houses along the street. I Google mapped the street, and it's just a regular residential neighborhood with a bunch of houses.
Yeah, but if I was in my house at 8:30 watching TV or whatever, someone screaming at the top of their lungs, I think I would go out and look to see.
Well, I'm sure they did. Like I said, there's other eyewitnesses, who I'll get into later, some of the stuff they say. But yeah, so obviously other people saw stuff. 8:30. It's January also, so it is nighttime. It's the dead of winter, where it gets dark at 4:30 or whatever, 5 o'clock. So it would be dark out. But 8:30 is not super late where everyone would be sleeping or something. So there has to be.
it could depend on what she was yelling. Like, she could have just been screaming, or could she be yelling, "Help me"? I feel like if she was just yelling and then someone thinks they hear something, but then she doesn't yell again, it could be like, oh, it was nothing, or it was just kids or something. And so if it's something like that, then they might write it off as someone just, playing.
Yeah, but if you look at your window though, and you see someone getting carried to a car screaming "Help me," like that would be alarming, I feel.
Well, yeah, but if it was like somewhere where you couldn't see where she was, but you could still hear someone yell, and then all of a sudden they just stop, you would second guess yourself and be like, oh, it's nothing. They're not screaming anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's happened before to me.
Yeah.
You think you hear something and then it goes away and you're like, oh, okay, it was nothing.
So, and I'm assuming, yeah, with there's like a few houses around, like there obviously would be somebody who heard something of some sort. And like I said, there were other eyewitnesses there. So yeah, also, and this is another detail that comes out by an eyewitness. Again, I don't know who this witness was, but they said that there was like something strange. They noticed that after they put Elnaz so the screaming stopped, and then they pushed her into the car, or put her inside the car. And then they got inside the car, and it says that they sat in the driveway for up to a minute before driving off, which is kind of a minute seems like an insignificant amount of time, but it kind of is a lot when you think about, like, you think you'd want to get like right out of there, like peel out of there as soon as you could, especially because she was screaming and everything. So you don't know who's going to be right there. So the fact that they like put her in and then sat there in the driveway for a minute, that's an extra minute, right? That the police have to get there. So like that's a kind of a weird detail. I don't know what they were doing inside the car in that time, but
They were trying to figure out where they were going to go. Maybe they didn't really know the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They're like getting their GPS ready or something. Like,
I feel like you would do that before you go.
Yeah,
I feel like you would have a good clear getaway.
Itself, though. I don't know if you ever like come back to your GPS and it's not there anymore, and you have to re-input it.
But yeah, I mean, it's probably something super like not significant or like interesting. Like, yeah, their GPS just, a Siri or whatever wasn't working or wasn't cooperating or something, so they had to like reset their GPS, which is totally possible. But it's just kind of like, or though. You'd think, though, the driver would still just get out of the driveway. They can still reprogram the GPS, just get out of the driveway, like get off that street at least, and then maybe figure out.
Or maybe if she was like kicking and stuff, or maybe it made like you could see that obviously something was happening in the back seat. They were trying to get her to settle down, so that if they were driving and someone sees this frantic lady, then they're going to be worried. But if they could get her to like, I don't know, look like she fell asleep or just like stop kicking, then it would be a little bit less conspicuous driving down the street.
Again, we don't know what they were doing inside the car in that time, but it was up to a minute before they peel out of the driveway and eventually leave. And they do leave. So they were driving a white Lexus RX SUV, and this vehicle was captured on some surveillance footage. So probably, I don't know if it was at Elnaz's home or another home in the neighborhood, but there was a still image of the SUV captured on surveillance footage. So it was like a super grainy image, as it always is. You can't make out a license plate, or you can't really see anything other than the white car. And they were able to like get that was the make and the model of the car based on that still image or eyewitnesses. So that's what they were assuming that the make was initially at the time. And then but you'd think if it captured the car, you'd think it would also capture the people before getting into the car or leaving the car. But there was never any surveillance footage that was released of the people anywhere on surveillance footage. So I don't know if it was captured and like the police just haven't released it, but I'm assuming they would release it if they had it, because they would want people to help identify who these people were. So the police were immediately contacted and asked for the public's assistance to check their own home security cameras to see if they picked up anything of interest, or if there might be someone who saw what happened or knew anything about what took place that night. So the police were on the case immediately. I'm just thinking, like, just imagine being in your own home 1 minute and then just being carried out by these three men who are dressed as cops and then thrown into a vehicle in a matter of minutes and then just never being seen again. Like I said at the beginning, I feel like that's what you would see in a horror movie or something, right? And so it's like just so everyone's worst nightmare, I feel. So I couldn't even imagine, what was going through her mind and what was going through the homeowner's mind, having to witness what happened. Reports state that the police uniforms that were worn by the men who abducted Elnaz were not legitimate police uniforms, but that they were just wearing gear that was made to look like they were police officers. So I took from that, I guess, like, maybe they had, a badge, or maybe they had like a bulletproof vest or something that made it look like they were cops, but it wasn't a full-on police uniform that was an official uniform, so it was like obviously fake and meant to look like police officers when they actually weren't. So like I said, the surveillance footage does capture these three men fleeing the scene in the white Lexus RX SUV. So it just captures the SUV, but not the actual men. But eyewitnesses say that the three men were described as black, but no other description or identifying information has been released, or at least at that time. So that's the only thing that eyewitnesses were able to provide to the police. And an article from the Toronto Sun. So I know the Toronto Sun isn't like the most reputable news source. A lot of times I feel like they do put a lot of like sensationalized information about cases and stuff like that on their website, but I decided to include this just because I feel like it could be something of important to note. But the report of the Toronto Sun says that a local posted on an online forum that neighbor, so it's kind of like a person posted that someone else went to the police, so it's like third-hand information, so take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But there was a local that posted on an online forum that the neighbors went to the police to say that there was a, quote, very suspicious bearded man watching the house where Elnaz was living leading up to the abduction. His white car with license plates covered made several rounds of Trailwood Place, end quote. This has not been substantiated or confirmed by law enforcement, but I mean, it was a white vehicle as well that this person went and said, and it was a white vehicle involved in the abduction. I have a hard time believing why someone would go to the police saying that they saw a very suspicious bearded man watching the neighborhood if it didn't actually happen. So I feel like for that to just be like a random made up fact would be kind of far-fetched. So I have to believe that there is maybe some legitimacy to that or some truth to that. But like I said, it is kind of like a third-hand information of someone who posted on a forum that someone else's neighbor went to the police. So it's like a game of telephone, so who knows what the actual information was.
It could have been false information to throw the police off. Like someone that was involved. I'm going to give them a description of complete opposite of what it actually was.
Yeah, that's true too. And if it was just a local who posted, they said there was a local who posted on a forum that the neighbors went to the police. So was this person pretending to be a local that posted on the forum with just a random piece of information that they knew some people might latch onto? Who knows? Like you said, I thought it is possible too that it could just be someone involved just trying to like divert from who actually was involved. But like I said, it's the Toronto Sun, so I don't know exactly if that's legit or not. So police detective Matt Watson was the officer who was placed onto the case, and he works for the OPP, and he was pleading with the public to come forward about anything that they might know in this case. He says, quote, "We are hoping for anything anyone saw. If anybody heard anything or saw anything who hasn't already spoken to us, we're urging them to come forward and share that information with us. Even if it seems insignificant, we'd like to hear about it," end quote. And Watson said that the men appeared to be armed. So he has that information that they were armed. So like I said, that could have been how they overpowered this homeowner, if they pointed the gun at him or something like that. And I can't imagine that you would go into that situation in an attempt to abduct someone without being armed. Like, I feel like you would have, or even if it was a fake gun, but you would want to appear like a threat. So, and Matt Watson is actually an OPP officer who was involved in the investigation of another unsolved case, and that's the case of Josh Evans from late 2020. And I didn't really look too much into that case because I was trying to focus on this one, of course, but allegedly there was some shoddy police work in that case, or some people weren't happy with the investigation. So some folks might be skeptical of the same officer, being in charge of Elnaz's abduction, because he didn't really have the best sort of track record, especially when it came to Josh Evans' case. So, like I said, I don't know the details exactly about that. Just kind of the same sort of stuff that we see in all these other cases that we cover, just like a lot of dropping the ball. So I hope that doesn't happen in this case, and I hope that he is actually looking into every possible lead. I have no reason to believe that he isn't on this case, but just wanted to throw that out there as well. So, like I said, Elnaz was living in Wasaga Beach at this time, but it wasn't necessarily by choice. I mean, she was living with some family members after being told by the police in Richmond Hill to seek a safe place to stay while another investigation was taking place. And now that police investigation actually stems from an incident that occurred just a month before Elnaz's abduction.
Imagine, if you dare.
Whoa, hold tight, let's...
A podcast so shocking.
No, it's not that shocking, it's just...
So disturbing.
Now you're just being dramatic.
That it will chill you to your very core.
Have you even heard the show?
There's no escaping.
I mean, there is.
The horrible consequences of...
Just press pause, but don't do that.
Bright Day.
Hi, my name is Byron McCoy, and each week I join my friends Sam and Kelly, where we talk films, monsters, the paranormal, and pretty much all things frightening. From time to time, we talk with like-minded specialists, directors, actors, cryptozoologists, conspiracy theorists, but whether it's the human terror of serial killers and home invasions, or the extra-normal phenomena Kelly covers in her Cryptids and Conspiracies segment, if it bleeds, hacks, stabs, chops, summons, sacrifices, abducts, or bites, it is Fright Day. Every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at frightday.com.
Frightday.com.
Stop it. You're scaring them.
Sorry.
So on the evening of December 21st, 2021, Elnaz was attacked in the parking garage of her condo building by two masked men who dragged her out of her car and violently beat her with a frying pan. This assault required Elnaz to get 35 to 40 stitches on her forehead. There was a massive gash on her face from this violent attack. And I saw a picture, one of the articles had a picture of her, in the hospital with the stitches. It was a huge, huge gash. Of course, they beat her over the head with a frying pan. So you can imagine the kind of mark that would leave. And also, too, that's one thing that the family says that could also help to be an identifying feature of Elnaz, to help identify if somebody might see her, because she would have this massive scar, at the center of her forehead. So, of course, the police started to investigate this attack immediately. And during the course of, the investigation into this attack, they actually searched her car, and they were alarmed to find a tracking device attached to the car. And so that's obviously significant detail to suggest that somebody was keeping tabs on her, trying to follow her every move. But that actually wasn't even the first time that there was a device like this found attached to her vehicle. Previous to that attack, Elnaz took a car that she was leasing to a local dealership in order to be serviced, and upon inspection by the staff, there were two tracking devices that were found. These devices were removed, and obviously they informed Elnaz of this, but she ended up later buying the car, and she took it back home with her. So I feel like either there's two scenarios that could have happened. So either someone who was the person who was keeping tabs on her, placed 3 devices on her car, then only 2 were found by the dealership staff during their inspection. And then, there was still one on the car, which was the one that was then found by the police after her attack in December. Or these 2 devices that were put on there initially were removed, and then that same person returned to place a third one to replace those 2 that were taken. So either one of those things, I don't know, but there were 3 devices that were attached to her vehicle at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say 3 seems like a lot. That's someone desperately wanting to track her down.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if somebody would put, you could put 2 on, in case one is found, then we'll put another one just in case. But to put 3, that seems like a lot at one time to put on. So I kind of am leaning towards, they've discovered or found out that the 2 were removed, and then they went back and then put a third one on after that. Because I feel like 3 seems like a lot to put. But maybe not. I mean, maybe they thought, well, in case the other one is discovered, then we'll have a third as a backup. I don't know. But obviously someone was being very persistent.
But we don't know it was the same person that put all 3 of them on there, even though it would be kind of a coincidence that there's 2 random people that are trying to stalk her. Yeah,
I know that the 2 that the dealership found were on the undercarriage or underside of the car. I don't know where the third one was. It didn't say where the third one was placed.
Do we know if they're all the same brand, the same device, or were they different ones?
We don't know.
Can we go back to the frying pan? Why use that as a weapon? I feel like this is such a randomest thing to use.
Yeah, to me, the fact that they use a frying pan doesn't scream organized crime or something. To me, that seems like a very sort of last minute sort of planned thing. I don't know. I feel like if it was a more of an organized thing where they were planning this thing and they were going to attack it, it would be not using a frying pan. I don't know. I feel like you would have some sort of other way. So to me, the fact when I read that it was a frying pan, I was like, well, this maybe maybe not someone who's a professional, like, hit person or something, right? Like, it's just like a random person who has something out against her. Or two. Well, there's two people, but...
Yeah, I feel like someone that would be planning that would have an actual weapon that they were going to use, not a random frying pan from their house. And so it does kind of seem like it was like a spur of the moment, just grab something quick. But I don't know.
Yeah, like they were just in their house and then they got this idea to do this. And then they were like, well, this is what we have in our house. It's a fry pan, so we're just going to use that. It's not really a weapon of choice, I feel, that you would really see from too many people who are planning this thing out. But I don't know. Crazier things have happened, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they could have had it in their car already. Like maybe they just bought a new frying pan from the store and it was already in their car. Like that could be, I don't know, that's like far-fetched, but you just never know, right?
Yeah, it just seems like a very random weapon to use. And so going back to the tracking devices, so either scenario that happened, like whether the three were all placed on at the same time and were just found at different times, or if it was like they were placed there after each other. Obviously, it's clear that there is somebody out there who is obviously very interested in keeping track of her, keeping up with her every move. According to CBC News, a cousin said, quote, "That is obviously very jarring for her. She was terrified for her life," end quote. So because of the tracking devices that were placed on her car and this violent attack, she was advised to find somewhere safe to stay while the investigation was being done because her life was very clearly at risk. So that's when she went to Wasaga Beach to stay with her family members. She was only there for a few short weeks before that night on January 12th, 2022, which was the night of the abduction. A report by CBC News says that Elnaz returned to the GTA only 2 days before her abduction to collect her car, cell phone, and computer, which were all in police custody. They were in police custody because they were searching these for additional tracking devices. So at some point, obviously after that incident happened, and they found the tracking devices, they like confiscated her electronics, like I said, her computer and her cell phone, and her car, because they were going to do a thorough search to make sure that there were no other devices that were attached to these things. On January 10th, Elnaz drove the vehicle from the GTA to Wasaga Beach. So she left Wasaga Beach to go to the GTA to pick up her car and then drove that same car back to that residence on Trailwood Place in Wasaga Beach. According to people close to the situation, this was the only time Elnaz ever left the Trailwood Place residence since moving there a few weeks earlier. And police have said that there's no evidence to suggest that an additional tracking device was placed on the vehicle at the time it was parked at the home on Trailwood Place. Because I'm thinking, if they removed all the tracking devices and it was in police custody, and she drove it right away. She took it from the police and drove it right back to Wasaga Beach. Like, how did they find her there in Wasaga Beach at that house? You would think, oh, did they place another tracking device on the car? So when she drove it back there, it led them right to her. But the police said that there was no evidence to suggest that. And obviously, if they had done a thorough search and they felt comfortable releasing it to her, then they knew that there wasn't. So that was my question of like, well, how did they know that she was at that residence?
It makes me think that this was very personal because they maybe knew her family. They knew she had family in that area. Maybe they knew people that knew who she was staying with, so they could have gotten contact with people like that. So it makes me think like it wasn't just a coincidence that she got attacked 2 times. It was planned, and they knew a lot about her to be able to figure out where she went.
Yeah, and initially too, the police, or there was they didn't know if the 2 incidents were connected, but I feel like how could they not be? Like, what are the chances that somebody's going to get attacked and then 3 weeks later get abducted? Like, it seems like a very, very strange coincidence if those would be completely unrelated. But yeah, like, if it was somebody close to her who knew that's where she was staying, because I would want to know, like, a question I would have if I was the police of like, who knew that she was at that residence? Did she tell, I'm assuming she didn't tell a lot of people that she was there, but like if she told close family members or if a couple of friends, like I want to know like how many people knew exactly where she was. Or like you said, if it was someone from her past who just knew her, was close to her and knew that she had a residence there or she had a family who lived there and then just happened to, oh, let's check out this place and see if she's here, and she was. Like, I feel like they had to have known that she was there for sure.
Also, she kept the same car, so somebody obviously knew her car, so they could have followed it all the way out there as well.
You think like from the police station? Like somebody was following her from the minute she left the police station and followed her all the way back there?
Maybe, but I guess they would have to know she was there somehow to follow her out.
Yeah, like somebody knew that the car was being released from police custody that day and that Elnaz was going to be there that day to pick it up and then know to be there at the exact time and follow her. Like that seems like a lot of things to just know.
Yeah. Or there was another tracking device in the car that they didn't find. And
yeah, like, yeah, that'd be, if the police missed a tracking device, like that's pretty shoddy work. How do you miss if you're inspecting it thoroughly like they say they do? And I'm going to get a little bit more into that a little bit later on, but if you're doing a thorough check of this and you still miss this tracking device, that then allows the person to follow her exactly to where she's staying. Like that's a huge mess up. Yeah, but I mean, it's obviously possible. So either the tracking device was on there when she left Toronto and then drove back, or it was placed on there at some point after she was already there, but they still would have had to know that she was there in order to go and place one on her car. So for the police to say that there was no evidence that there was another one placed on it at the time, they just say at the time that it was parked there. But I don't know, nothing ever came up of like if they searched it and there was another one there. But if there was one there when they searched it, then you would think, oh, then it must have been there the whole time. That's how they found her, right?
yeah, exactly. They're not going to put one on after that she's already at the place, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even if they did, they would have still had to know that she was at that place.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if there was no tracking device, so like they still would have had to know she was there.
Yeah.
Unless, if you're thinking like, oh, maybe there was a tracking device in her phone or something, but her phone was also in police custody. Her phone and her computer were all in police custody, and I'm assuming those things were released to her as well at the same time as the car was. So if they're releasing it to her, they felt confident there wasn't anything there either. But if they missed one on the car, they could have missed one in the phone too. Who knows?
Maybe, I guess, but was she like active on social media and stuff? Was she posting pictures? I feel like it's easier for people if they want to find out where you are to figure out your location or to look at your social media and, just figure out where you are. It's way easier, I think, than we think it is.
I mean, I think, and there was one YouTube video that I saw that's kind of really the only one, or there's only a couple out there that cover this case because it is so recent, but there was one video where the guy who's talking about the case actually like talks a little bit about her social media and stuff, and like there wasn't a ton that he was able to find. So from that perspective, it doesn't seem like she was super active, but also he wasn't like following her or anything. So like maybe she has a restricted profile. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's not like an outsider person who wouldn't follow her would have all this access to information. But and also I feel like if you're someone who has tracking devices placed on your car and you're like at this place because your life's in risk, you're not going to be posting a super ton on social media about your location. I mean, maybe you are, but I would sense that you probably wouldn't be doing that if you know that somebody's obviously very interested in knowing where you are.
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like I find that there's ways that people can track like a phone number if they knew her phone number and just, I don't know, just things like that.
I mean, it's like a crazy tech world out there. Like, who knows? I mean, if she had an iPhone, can't you do the thing like find my iPhone or track my iPhone or something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have an iPhone, so I don't know, but like, there is ways I feel like, and even if you know maybe a little bit or advanced in the tech world, you might have some hacks or something where you can find. There has to be a way, I feel, which is like pretty creepy to think about. But
also, I'm curious about the first attack. Did her attackers? Does anybody know if they said anything to her, like threatened her with anything, or ask for something from her, or warn her about something? Like, did they say anything, or did they just kind of attack her and then leave?
We don't know. The only thing, if they did say anything to her, she didn't disclose what it was, or she didn't tell anyone, because none of the reports, or maybe it's just not out there, but none of the reports I could see. And like I said, there's not a ton of reports on there because it's a new case. So all of the like CBC News and Global News, like all of these articles, just a lot of them just say the same information, that say that she was attacked in her parking garage in December with a frying pan. She needed 35 to 40 stitches, but it didn't say anything about like if they said anything, or obviously they didn't have any sort of like, I feel like if they said something to her or warned her, that would be like a lead as to like what it was about, but none of that stuff ever came out. So I guess I don't think that they did.
Or it's probably because it's still ongoing. The police aren't going to release any of that information, probably because they're probably, if they know something, they're probably holding it so that they can investigate anyway, so they wouldn't put it out there, I guess.
And I mean, they don't know who these two men are. I'll get a little bit more into a little bit of that later, but if they're that, you know, they're really desperate to like find out leads of who these people are. I feel like if they knew anything, but like, again, you can't really release it. Just because you know the information doesn't mean everything has to be out there. They're going to kind of just tell you the bare minimum, but I don't know. I feel like if you're desperate to figure out who these people are, it's like you would want the public to know everything that you had. I don't know, but I could be, but we see all the time where like the police keep things close to the vest until they have it for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to like compromise the investigation by giving everything up. So it's totally understandable that there's a lot we don't know that the police might know.
Yeah, that's true. And like I said, we don't know if Elnaz knew the men in either of her attacks. A spokesperson for the family has said that they do not know if the two attacks are connected, or that's what they said at that time, but that they do know from the little information they have that the men who abducted her were not the same people who attacked her in the parking garage weeks earlier. And the way they knew, because they said that the 3 men who abducted her were 3 black men, and the 2 men that attacked her were not black men. So Toronto lawyer Devin Baines, who was hired by Elnaz's family, he is skeptical of the police work so far in the investigation. The police only had Elnaz's electronic devices for roughly 3 weeks, which he says is, quote, shockingly short, end quote, if the work was done correctly. So, yeah, because the attacks only happened like 3 weeks apart. So obviously they confiscated those things and then gave it back to her 2 days before her abduction. So they really did only have them for those short amount of time. And he says that if it was like a thorough search, that it would have been in their custody for a lot longer. So, I mean, if that's true, then I guess it is possible to think that they missed a tracking device. But that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
but we don't know.
Well, and it seems like such a coincidence that she's attacked, and then as soon as she gets her stuff back, she's attacked again. Like, that timeline is just super. It seems like it fits perfectly with what we're thinking, that maybe there was a tracking device that wasn't found, because it's almost a coincidence, too much of a coincidence if they're not related.
Yeah, like it only happened 2 days after she picked up all of those stuff and brought them back to that place. Then 2 days later, she's abducted. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't happen like, you know, a month later, or it didn't happen like before she had all of that stuff. So it's like, it seems kind of weird that like 2 days after she gets all these items back, then these men come to her door. So I guess it is possible that they did miss a tracking device, which, like I said before, if that is the case, that's really a really horrible mistake that can't really be forgiven. Like I said, obviously it's allegedly, I don't know, obviously it's just speculation, but
it's like, you might go into this, but I'm curious now to know if they have any like theories about why she would be targeted. Like, is she wealthy? Was she going to be coming into money? Did she maybe witness something that she shouldn't have while living in Iran and people were coming after her? Like, do we know any kind of theories that are out there about why she would have been targeted?
Do we know, like, her late husband's background? Like, was he involved in anything or anything like that?
yeah, so there is kind of a couple of theories swirling out there. I mean, if you check the Reddit forums and stuff for this case, or you go online and search this case up, I'm sure you can find a couple of them. I didn't really want to go into those because they aren't conclusive. There's nothing to confirm them. It's a lot of speculation, and I felt like putting it in would just kind of, you know, you can't, you know, I didn't want to put it in there because it would confuse or like potentially put like false information out there that isn't at all connected to what actually happened. So if you are interested to hear about some of the theories that are out there, you can go and search it on your own, but I didn't really want to go into that. So to answer your question, I feel like there could be something from her past or her life in Iran, or something that she knew or witnessed or something, or maybe even something that she didn't even know. Like, you know what I mean? Like something she wasn't even aware that she knew or was a secret, or just something that somebody didn't want her to say. You know what I mean? So I don't know. None of the legitimate reports that I saw ever said anything about a possible motive. That's all I'll say on that for now. So right after the attack, or shortly after the attack on December 21st, the police did come forward and say that the vehicle that was driven by the two perpetrators was stolen from an area of Finch Avenue East and Don Mills Road in Toronto, and it was later recovered. And then the white Lexus that the perpetrators were driving was also reported stolen and then later recovered as well. So in both instances, it was a stolen vehicle that was used, and then it was later, discarded. And however, nothing has ever been released about the contents of the vehicle or what was found inside. Obviously, they didn't find her or anything, but there was nothing ever came out that said if they found any fingerprints or any evidence about anything inside the car. So that's never been put out there. But they did find the car that the three men drove off. Or at both times, in both incidents, they found the car that was driven by the perpetrators. So
again, there's like another connection, very similar, stealing a car, attacking her, and then ditching the car. So it seems more and more like these are related.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that before you said. I was going to be like, that is a possible connection, but I mean, people steal cars all the time, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it's connected just because it's a stolen car, but it is kind of like just another thing. And it's like a similar, not motive, but similar, what's the word, like similar MO, I guess, is the way, like, it's a stolen vehicle, and like obviously if the person didn't want their own car to be traced back to them or something, so they're going to use a stolen car. Like, I feel like that is probably what's happening here in both cases. But
yeah, and I feel like they would have dusted for fingerprints, so they could probably compare them from both those stolen cars to see if they match. I feel like that's obvious, like police 101, and they probably know the answers to that question, but they just haven't released anything about it yet.
Yeah, because I want to know like what they found in the car. Maybe they found nothing and that's why there is nothing, but maybe people leave stuff behind all the time. You don't even realize you are, like, not even fingerprints, but like just like trash or something that they think of or something, right, in a car. So I mean, obviously you'd think that these people would be smart enough to not leave anything behind, but I'd be just curious to see, like, there has to be something in that car.
Yeah, and I guess you said they weren't the same perpetrators, because we know that because of how they looked, but there could have been like a driver that was the same or something. Like, there could have been the same person that was in both cars, even if the same people didn't attack her. You know what I mean? Like, 2 people attacked her the first time, but there could have been 3 people in the car. That kind of thing. Yeah,
but they said that the 3 people were not the same people who attacked her.
Okay.
So it's 5 people, different people. But it could also be the same group of people, though. Like, if it's a big group of people, it could just be
like all 5 people could have been in those 2 cars at different times, but just 2 sets of people attacked her. But it could have been the same people.
But also, if it's something organized like that, like if you have a big group of people who are, it's like 2 are going to attack her here, why didn't they just abduct her on the 21st? Like, if they wanted to abduct her, why wouldn't they have just done it then? You know what I mean? Like, it seems weird that they would attack her and then come back and abduct her later. Like, that just leaves that's like more people involved, more traces that you're going to leave behind, more eyewitnesses. Like, if you're going to do it, just do it that one time. Like, it seems weird to break it up into 2 incidents.
Yeah, that's true. That is weird. That's why it kind of makes me think like they said something to her, or were like, we want money from you, and if you don't give us what we want, then next time it's going to be worse or something. Because yeah, if that was their whole goal this whole time, why not take her the first time? Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. That was the first thing that came to my mind. It's like, although, I mean, these people are using a frying pan, so they're probably not the most, like, well put together or, like, thought out, like, organized crime people, but, like, it just seems like a very 101. Yeah, like, you would not break it up into 2 separate incidents. Like, if you want to abduct her, you're going to just do it. You're not going to, I mean, like you said, unless they threatened her the first time and then she didn't, like, comply with it, and then, but wouldn't she have told someone? I mean, maybe not. I'm just like, she would have told someone about that, but, like, family members and everything, like, are saying that she has no connection to any nefarious activities, or, like, nothing ever came out about that. So I feel like if she told someone, then they would have said, like, yeah, she told us that, like, you know what I mean? Like, she would have said, oh yeah, they told me in this attack that this happened.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the police have said that there no evidence to say that has connection to any, quote, nefarious activities, end quote, and no criminal record. So
did you say the police think these two incidences are connected, or they haven't said?
Well, I think, like, one of the articles I saw that was by CTV News, it came out like the day after the abduction, and it or like a couple days after the abduction, and it mentions the fact that she was attacked in December. And they interview a family member, and the family member saying that we don't know if they're connected at that time. But that was a couple days after. But I'm going to get into a little bit later on. The family is circulating. There's surveillance footage out there of these 2 men that attacked her in the parking garage. So we do have, like, images of these 2 men, and they say in those postings and the poster that it's believed to be connected to the abduction. So now they think that it's connected. So I don't know like what information they got in that time period that changed that. So one actual major development or something that's potentially related is only 9 days after Elnaz's abduction. A man named Mohammed Lilo was taken into custody and charged with criminal harassment. And it was not revealed who the victim of this harassment was, but it is suspected since then to be Elnaz. So he's reportedly an ex-boyfriend of Elnaz's, and the couple broke up in October 2021. The charges in question were said to occur, quote, in the weeks leading up to Elnaz's abduction, end quote, which would line up with that timeline. Like the attack was only 3 weeks before the abduction, so the events of the criminal harassment that he was charged with took place in those few weeks leading up to her abduction. There are not many details surrounding this, except that he was released on bail, and part of his bail conditions prohibit him from being in Wasaga Beach. He returned to court in February, like later in February, and his next court date is scheduled for April. And this is from CTV News, actually, so talking about Mohammed Lilo's arrest and his ongoing court case. It says, quote, investigators said they believe the December attack is connected to the ongoing investigation by the Ontario Provincial Police into the abduction of Elnaz Hajtamiri. So now in this latest one, they say that investigators believe that they are attacked. So that's the first article I saw that came out that said that in like an official capacity that it's said to be connected. Obviously, that's a super huge red flag. Like this man who's her ex-boyfriend, they broke up in October of 2021, so that would have been only a couple of months before this December attack. And like he's charged with criminal harassment, but he was never charged with like assault. Like, so if they're assuming that when he was one of these men, he would be charged with assault, right? Like you're beating someone over the head with a frying pan. Like that's, so the fact that it was just criminal harassment, I don't know what that means or how is that different from harassment? Criminal harassment versus harassment? I don't know. Are those two separate things or are those the same?
Yeah, I don't know. Do they know if he's involved with any kind of groups? Because I feel like maybe he had the power to get these people together to do something to her on his behalf. Do they know anything about that, about him?
We do not. The only thing we know about him is that he was an ex-boyfriend of hers and that he's prohibited from being in Wasaga Beach as part of his bail conditions. But he is out on bail and he's been to court a couple of times, or at least once since his arrest, and now he's scheduled to go back into court this month, April. So I don't...
Criminal harassment is like stalking. So if he was stalking her, that's why he would...
Like, could he be the one putting the tracking devices on her car?
He might have been, because I just looked up criminal harassment and what that is. It says commonly known as stalking.
So that's like the legal term for it. But is that different from harassment?
Yeah.
Criminal harassment is different than harassment? Or maybe just the legal term is criminal harassment. I mean, it's always criminal. Harassment is criminal.
Or harassment in itself is just like aggressive pressure or intimidation. That's what harassment is. So put the two together, it's a crime. I don't know.
Well, harassment in itself is a crime. So I don't know how, like, what criminal harassment is. Like, if that's like the next level, if it's like kind of like the second tier, kind of how you have like first degree, second degree murder, it's like criminal harassment is like a step up from harassment. Or is it like criminal harassment is like a series of harassment events that happen over a certain period of time versus harassment just being like a one isolated incident or something? I don't know. I'm not a legal lawyer or no legal terms, but anyway, that's what he was charged with, was criminal harassment. So, and for something that took place in the few weeks leading up to her abduction. So like, I don't know, kind of sketchy. Just in the timeline itself. And also, like, I feel like placing tracking devices on someone's car would be a form of harassment, obviously. So was he arrested in connection to the tracking devices?
Because that's considered stalking.
Yeah.
You're tracking someone down for a purpose of beating them or whatever you may be doing while you want to track them down. And yeah. Maybe he was.
Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, that's the thing is, like, that's all we know is that was his charge, was criminal harassment, and that it was due to events leading up that happened in the weeks leading up to her abduction. That's all we know. But like, all of that lines up with the tracking device stuff. All of that happened in the weeks leading up to her abduction, and the attack did too. But they're not obviously connecting him necessarily to the attack on her, because if he was connected to that attack, he would have been charged with like assault or like some other major charge. Like that's not criminal harassment. Like dragging somebody out of their car and hitting them with a frying pan is not criminal harassment. That's assault, causing bodily harm. Obviously, they're not connecting him to that necessarily, but something else that's considered separate, which is just weird.
I guess, but if you orchestrate a group of people to attack somebody else, what are you going to be charged with? Would you be charged with assault as well, even though you didn't actually do it?
Conspiracy to commit assault? I don't know. Red flag, sketchy. Definitely look into this a little bit more. But like I said, there's not that much out there about him. Like I said, 2 men were captured on surveillance footage at the scene of her assault in December 2021, and their descriptions have been posted publicly. Both are described as medium build, between 25 and 30 years old. One is 6'2" with short brown hair, wearing a camo puffed jacket and dark pants. The other is about 5'10" and was wearing a dark hooded jacket. And they were wearing masks, like not masks that you wear like when you're going to rob a store, like surgical masks, like COVID masks. So on the surveillance footage, you only see like half of their face because the top or the bottom half is covered by the mask. And in the video or in the surveillance picture that they released, like it is clear, or it's believed that they were wearing gloves, which means that, little fingerprints would have been recovered from that stolen vehicle at all. So, I mean, there's also December. So like, I don't think, they weren't necessarily wearing gloves to cover up their fingerprints, but more so just because it's cold. Like it was just December in Toronto, so it's cold, but they were wearing gloves. So like they probably would explain if there was no fingerprint evidence or anything found in that car. Elnaz herself is described as 5'3" with a slim build and shoulder length black hair. Police, family, and friends are encouraging anybody with information about this case to call the tip line at 1-833-728-3415. Or if you want to remain anonymous, you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. And just in some quotes that have come from Elnaz's family, her mother says, quote, "Elnaz is a very kind-hearted woman, always extending a helping hand to the needy and being an honest and loyal friend. We beg whomever has taken her to be merciful to Elnaz. Please do not harm her and give her back to us. We are all in so much pain and agony even thinking where she could be right now. She cannot handle the cold, so please give her blankets and keep her safe." End quote. And then one of her cousins says, quote, "Just please let her go. If you spent enough time with her, you would understand this is a wonderful, kind, warm, educated, charitable woman. Just please drop her off, no questions asked. We just want to see her come back alive. She doesn't deserve this, neither does her family." End quote. So we're going to post a picture of Elnaz, of course, and then also a picture of the surveillance footage of those 2 men. So if anyone knows anything, call those numbers that we gave you to provide your tip, either anonymously, or you can call the other one if you don't want to remain anonymous. So we can definitely do our part to help bring Elnaz home. And we'll definitely update you as more updates come, because I'm sure we'll be getting more things that come out as things are revealed, or hopefully, they find her or they find the people responsible for taking her. So yeah, I really hope there's like a quick resolution to this case. And you can follow the Instagram account that's run by her family and friends. And the Instagram is Bring Elnaz Home. And if you use the hashtag Bring Elnaz Home, you can get involved in the conversation and help to bring her home. So we'll put a link to that Instagram account in the show notes as well. That's it for this week's episode, guys. So as always, you can follow us on all the social medias at Crime Family Podcast on Instagram, Crime Family Pod 1 on Twitter, and Crime Family Podcast on Facebook. We also have an email, so you can send us your case suggestions, your feedback, your tips, anything like that to crimefamilypodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to our new website. It's crimefamilypodcast.ca, and there you can leave us a voicemail. So if you want to leave us some case suggestions or your thoughts on the podcast, you might hear your voice on the show in the near future if you would like. You can also check out episode descriptions, transcripts, all that kind of stuff. And so we're excited about the website, so definitely visit that and check it out. Thank you guys for tuning in, and let's try. Like I said, we'll share Elnaz's picture on all of our social medias and everything, and we'll try to help this family out and to bring her home. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.